After attacks by PIJ, Hamas, and other organizations on Israeli settlements in southern Israel on October of 2023, Israel's military, the IDF, has launched a brutal campaign in Gaza, leading to extraordinary casualties. Images of mass starvation, deprivation, and violence against nearly 2 million residents of Gaza have circulated online. Some commentators have claimed that the conflict between Israelis and Palestinians over the land between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean Sea is the latest chapter in a centuries-long religious war. But the reality is that this conflict is a modern one that goes back about 100 years, not thousands. To understand what's happening today, we have to go back, before the State of Israel, before the British Mandate, all the way to the Ottoman Empire. In the 1850s, about 500,000 people lived in the land of Palestine under Ottoman rule. The majority were Muslims, but there was also a significant population of Christians, Jews, Europeans, and Ottoman officials. It's important to remember that this period predated the global rise of nationalism. Despite having a unique culture and traditions, the people living in Palestine were not considered Palestinians, but Arabs, people from the Arabic-speaking world. But approaching the eve of the First World War, several nationalist movements centered on the lands of Palestine began to emerge: the Arab Nationalist Independence Movement and political Zionism. Zionism began to emerge in Europe at the end of the 19th century, expressing the idea that Judaism represented not just a religion and culture, but a national identity, and that European, or Ashkenazi, Jews could escape anti-Semitism by European states by creating a Jewish state. Early Zionists considered several potential sites for a Jewish state, including Uganda and Argentina, before deciding that the Jewish people of Europe should create the state of Israel in the land of Palestine because of its importance in ancient Jewish history. But to make this ambition a reality, the Zionist movement had to contend with the reality that the land they wanted was already occupied. Emblematic of Zionist messaging at the time, British author Israel Zangwill coined a famous slogan of the Zionist movement: "A land without people, for a people without a land." This, of course, ignored the existence of the population of Arab Palestinians who had lived in the area for centuries. Political scientist Norman Finkelstein describes the shared language of virgin land myths among ideologies of territorial conquest. A refinement of this belief suggests that the territory, if not literally empty, is thinly peopled by unsettled tribes whose aboriginal rights of tenure are at best tenuous, since they have not worked the land. Under the Ottoman Empire, a small but steady stream of Jewish immigrants from Europe and globally began migrating to Palestine. In 1901, the Jewish National Fund collected funds to organize the purchasing of land across the most fertile areas of Palestine. During the First World War, the growing Arab nationalist movement collaborated with the British government to rebel against Ottoman rule, with the promise that, in exchange, the British would assist in the creation of an independent Arab state for Palestinians. However, after the war, the British seized Palestine and other regions in the Middle East as British mandates. In 1917, Home Secretary Lord Balfour released what is now known as the Balfour Declaration, pledging British support for the creation of a Jewish state in Palestine and abandoning the Arab national cause. Throughout the next several decades, under the British Mandate, Jewish immigration to Palestine continued to grow, and tensions built between Jewish and Arab residents, often boiling over into violence. As the JNF purchased more lands, it often evicted long-standing Arab tenant farmers, raising tensions higher. In 1936, Palestinian Arabs began a 3-year uprising against the British by orchestrating a general strike, refusing to pay taxes, and launching attacks against both British government offices and new Jewish settlements. The Crown declared martial law and eventually crushed the revolt before deciding to limit Jewish immigration and support the partition of Palestine into 2 states, Jewish and Arab. In 1947, the British government declared an end to the mandate and announced the partition would be put into action, leading to disorganized violence between Jewish and Arab communities as the Mandate era approached its end. On March 10, 1948, a council of 11 veteran Zionist leaders, including future Prime Minister David Ben-Gurion, laid the plan for the ethnic cleansing of Palestine. They created Plan D, or Dalet in Hebrew, to remove Palestinians from land that would form the future Jewish state. It began as the Village Files, a registry of Arab villages created by the Jewish National Fund in 1940. This registry tracked geography, resources, demographics, economics, and a hostility index for hundreds of Palestinian villages. Orders were handed down from officials to brigades of the Haganah, the Zionist paramilitary forces, whose commanders on the ground ordered the depopulation of Palestinian communities within the proposed borders. Resistance was to be met with overwhelming violence. In late April, Jewish militias engaged in one of the most notorious massacres of this period in the village of Deir Yassin. Members of the community fought back against Haganah forces, and when the village was captured, the Zionist militias slaughtered the inhabitants.
30 واحد اللي راحوا من أهلي فك عند ياسين 30 واحد والله هذا سير أبويا بكى مختار سير أبويا بقول لك من حيث راح مقعد يكتلف أولادك قدام هذا باليهودي كاف ألا بقول مش إحنا اللي بنذبح فيكم برطانا اللي بنذبح فيكم.
News of the massacre at Deir Yassin was spread to Palestinian communities within the proposed borders of the Israeli state. Sniper fire, explosives, and the news of Deir Yassin were used to intimidate the Arab populations of large cities like Haifa into fleeing their homes. Hundreds of small villages like Tantura, which was an Arab community on the Mediterranean coast between newly established Jewish villages, were the victims of violent ethnic cleansing. Tantura, like many villages, fought back against militias like the Alexandria Battalion. When they eventually waved a white flag, they were slaughtered.
טנטורה היה כפר עשיר, בתים יפים, גרים כמו אירופאים, אתה יודע, וגם אנשים היו לבושות ויפה, ובאמת היה כפר אחד, אנס שם איזה ילדה בת 16, משהו כזה, אתה מבין? אבל זה מכוער מאוד, היה לנו בחור אחד, הוא נפטר, הוא היה פרא אדם, הוא לקח פשוט מאוד, ורצח אותם בתוך המכלאות. בתוך המכלאות, הם היו במכלאות, אתה יודע, חוטי ברזל כאלה, עגולים כאלה, אספו כל הגברים. הם יושבים שם, כולם, על הרצפה, ובא מישהו ולוקח תת מקלע ומתחיל זה, מחליף מחסנית, מה אתה חושב זה? כשהגדוד פוסע, אויב תחתיו קורע. כפריו נופלים לבחורים שלל, קקון וגם טנטורה, הגדוד יפעל במרץ, ישמיד אויב כשרץ.
כל כפר שנלחם בנו, נלחמנו בו. לכל אורך הכביש לחיפה, כל הכפרים נלחמו בנו. אז הייתה מטרה בכל הכפרים האלה להילחם בהם, על מנת שהם יסתלקו. נכנסו לכפרים, עוד היו אפילו פיתות חמות.
היה מגיע כפר, זה כבר היה פק"ל, היה אוטומטי. היו באים אוטובוסים, לקח את האנשים ולהוציא אותם. כשכבשנו את המקום, טרקטורים חרשו את המקום. חרשו. לא נשאר זכר של כפר. למה? לא רצו שתהיה, לא חזרה ולא זכר של המקום.
This event, the displacement of most Palestinians from their lands within the borders of the State of Israel, was named the Nakba, the catastrophe. As the campaign of depopulation began entering its final phase and the British Mandate approached its end, Israel declared itself an independent nation on May 14, 1948. In the following months, neighboring Arab states who were the recipients of fleeing Palestinian refugees launched an attack against Israel. Palestinians in villages caught in the fighting fled. By the end of the war, Israel's borders had expanded. The Israeli state had taken the majority of the land, ceded to a Palestinian state, and Palestinians who fled their lands during the war were denied return. Around 750,000 Palestinians were left stateless, as they remain to this day. The events of the Nakba and the Palestinian diaspora remain in the memory of Palestinians today. The front door key, a declaration of the hope they will one day return to their homes and land, exists as an enduring symbol of the Palestinian right to return. The displacement of the Palestinian people in 1948 is the key to understanding the dynamics of the decades that followed and the situation that exists today. To quote Israeli historian Ilan Pape, "It should be clear by now that no true reconciliation between Israelis and Palestinians can ever take place without full awareness of what happened in the Nakba."